Welcome back. On ESPN.com, Shams Charania did a deep dive into the fractured relationship between Giannis Antetokounmpo and the Bucks, while also detailing the deteriorating relationship between the head coach Doc Rivers and the players. So we now welcome in Shams Charania right now. Good morning, Shams. How are you? Thank you for being with us this morning. What stood out most to you about the situation that continues to keep unfolding here?
Yeah, Shay, I mean, I just think back to last summer and the last 11 months. This is not a saga that has just come out of nowhere in the last few weeks that's been predicated on the second half of the season. And as I talk to sources around the team, sources around players involved, people involved in all this, this could all have really been avoided. But the Bucks last summer, when Giannis Antetokounmpo privately, behind the scenes, approached them in May, along with his agent Alex Saratzis, about, listen, the time is now to part ways. The time has come to move on. John Horst, the general manager, Doc Rivers, the head coach, team ownership, they were aligned because the leadership of that organization had convinced ownership that we have a contending roster. We have a team that can compete and win. And as much as Giannis made it very clear in his private conversations with John Horst, the general manager of the team, that he had serious doubts about this team's ability, of this team's talent, of this team's culture to actually win, they decided to rebuke his trade efforts to keep him. And that's the tension that you see take place. I had one team source tell me in the last several days that when you have a star player that's 1 foot in, 1 foot out, you're just not going to win. And that tension is permeated across the Bucks organization, from ownership to management to the coaching staff to the players. And, there's several words I can use right now: dysfunction, chaos. Stephen A., I'll just put it plainly like this. You have a top 3 to 5 player in the world right now that has publicly and privately sparked and created and promoted an investigation into his own team. That, I think, speaks volumes across the NBA.
And I think it does. But I think for the purposes of this discussion, I want to get a little bit into Coach Doc Rivers. Is he an innocent bystander in all of this, where it's the powers that be putting the heavy hand down upon the organization and compelling him to make decisions that he otherwise would not want to make, and he's just stuck in the middle, like he alluded to on camera the other day, where he said, all of this is going on, it really should be kept private, but I'm sitting here and I'm in the middle and I have to talk about it. Is it that, or is there more to Doc Rivers' involvement that, you're trying to tell us about? Which one is it?
Yeah, S.A., when Doc Rivers was hired in 2023, midseason, replacing Adrian Griffin, it was clear to me, several sources around the team, that was ownership's decision, that he had Jimmy Haslam, Wes Edens. That was their guy. That's who they wanted to hire. And he has had a lot of say, a lot of control of everything that goes on within that Bucks organization. So when it comes to roster, when it comes to the team dynamic, when it comes to, obviously, he has control over his rotations, his lineups, all of those things. Doc Rivers is at the center of everything with the Bucks. This is an issue where last summer, if you address the Giannis situation, how does this season play out? We don't know. But listen, John Horst and Doc Rivers were 100% aligned with the team's direction, with the team's roster, with selling Giannis, on the fact that they felt this team was a contending team in the Eastern Conference. So as much as everyone now wants to potentially, one thing that's been mentioned to me in the last few days is now everyone wants to run from responsibility, whether that's the players, whether that's the coach, whether that's the general manager, the team leadership. Across the board, it's obviously about accountability. And we've seen Giannis come out on multiple different local interviews and be very, very direct with his feelings and how he feels about the team's culture, the team's identity, the team's moves. And that is something that the Bucks are dealing with right now. It is total dysfunction and chaos there.
What would you classify Doc Rivers? And Doc Rivers, by the way, is welcome on this show anytime. He knows that. But I have to ask you this question. Why would you classify Doc's relationship with Giannis Antetokounmpo? We clearly see how Giannis is feeling about the organization at this particular moment in time. We haven't seen any evidence on a public platform how he feels about Coach Doc Rivers. What would you classify that? What are your sources telling you hear about that relationship?
Stephen, across the entire roster, I reported it in my story, there's been a season-long disconnect from the top to the bottom. I'll give you a story. There was a team shoot-around meeting on March 21st in Phoenix. Doc Rivers called it with his veteran players, one by one. Taurean Prince, Kyle Kuzma. Then he got to Miles Turner, told Miles Turner. Multiple people in the room told me. He told Miles Turner, listen, I'm disappointed in your play. Expected more from you. Everyone's exiting the meeting. The two players that weren't addressed, that hadn't spoken yet, were the two long-standing players. That's Giannis and Bobby Portis. They both then speak up because the meeting's ending. So, listen, these two guys are your two long-standing players. They have a voice, too. And when it gets to Giannis's turn, he actually, multiple people in the room, again, tell me this, Stephen A., he actually ends up in front of the coaches, in front of everyone, supports Kyle Kuzma, supports Taurean Prince, and when he gets to Miles Turner, says, listen, I'm not disappointed in you. I felt I let you down. I wasn't on the court. I wasn't next to you on the court. I let you down. This is on me. This is my fault. And so that lets you know where everything is at, how Giannis, he's come out multiple times he just praised Joe Mazzulla in a local interview about how Joe Mazzulla has handled his team and not made excuses about his team's play. I'm not saying that was directed at anyone, but I think there's a lot of comments that have come out around that Bucks organization where, and especially from a player's perspective, where you get a deep dive into how they feel.
All right, Shams, really good stuff here. Thank you. We appreciate you taking the time this morning to kind of break this down. We'll talk to you a little bit later. Let's now bring in Dog and Brian Windhorst as well. And Wendy, we heard Shams kind of detail it there. The Milwaukee Bucks, they're kind of free-falling at this point. They're 31-48. Tremendously struggling. Every day that passes, something new seems to be coming out of that locker room. That's just not good. What is your reaction to what Shams just told us?
It's just exhausting. I need a scorecard to keep track of everything that's going on with the Bucks. And so I've kind of just thrown my hands up and said, I can't keep track of it. Here's what I know. I know that when Giannis has started this season, the Bucks are under 500. I mean, when Giannis plays, your team's under 500. You don't have a good team. I don't know what else to say. I was in this chair last summer when the news came out that they were cutting Damian Lillard to sign Miles Turner. I almost fell on the floor right there. Mm-hmm. It was one of the craziest roster maneuvers I've seen in my 23 years covering the NBA. And I remember checking in with the Pacers because I felt terrible for the Pacers. The Pacers were, moments away from maybe winning a championship, and then they had this terrible injury, and then they lost Miles Turner. And they were like, look, we can't pay him $100 million. We don't think he's a $100 million player. And we hate to lose him. We don't think he's a $100 million player. And I was like, well, the Bucks do. And he has not been a $100 million player this year. This roster is not a good roster. And that's what all of the details that Shams reported on and everything that Doc has said and this player has said and that player has done, not great. But it's a bad team. It's a bad team, and Giannis had a terribly injured season. Everything else is an outgrowth from that, is a mismanagement of what the situation was back in the summer. Bottom line.
A lot of desperation.
Yeah, I think I'll echo what Brian said, there's an incredible amount of Giannis fatigue. I'll talk as a fan, wake me up when it's over. Wake me up when Giannis ends up at the Knicks, which he won't because they have nothing to trade. Wake me up when he's with the Nets. Wake me up when he's on, the Spurs with Wembanyama. Wake me up when Giannis has another chance, in his words, to win a championship. They should never have fired Mike Budenholzer when they got rid of him. Giannis did not play in that series against the Heat. Budenholzer had just lost his brother to a car accident, and Giannis didn't even play. A lot of coaches were annoyed by that. He didn't go out there and play. Well, he was iffy, a game-time decision every game. Then they fired Budenholzer, and they've been a mess ever since. They fired a million coaches. They've been a mess. Now, listen, one thing, Brian's the expert on this, not me. Lillard wasn't going to play this year anyway. So as a result of that, they felt, we got to try to keep Giannis happy, got to try to be competitive. So we're not going to be able to have him play after the Achilles. So let's get rid of him, and then we can have room to sell Miles Turner. Gives us a fighting chance. Turns out that turned out to be a lousy decision because, I guess Turner's had a bad year. And you're right, he's not a $100 million good player.
He gave
good
him
role
so
player.
much money, though, for him not to help that roster.
Well, you're right. He's a good role player. He's not a guy that you can have as your second best player on the team. But again, I think the overall theme for me, and you guys know Doc, and we all know Doc, he's a great guy, is wake me up when Giannis has his scenario that he wants. Right. On a good team, win a championship, play 70 games, have an opportunity to win a title. Right. Because I think a lot of fans are every 5 seconds you hear about Giannis. Well, get this settled eventually, please. It's tiring.
What I would ask is that there needs to be, I don't know if the right word is compassion or empathy, but there needs to be some of it for Giannis. You know, it's one thing when you're an American-born player. When you're coming from Europe, when you're from Greece, you know, I mean, you don't know. It's like you're honest, but in the same breath, you sort of find yourself feeling alone to some degree, and you don't want to be as, you know, upfront and outwardly with your emotions, you know, because you're not surrounded by your people. That's why they got his brothers on the squad and stuff like that, because you want to be with people that you know you can trust and you feel that. And clearly, that's something I'm sensitive to that. I'm sensitive to being sensitive to how Giannis chooses to handle something, because he may be, you know, I'm here playing basketball, but the second the season's over, I'm going back overseas. I'm trying to be in my comfort zone and stuff like that. If we were someplace else other than America, how would we be? How much sensitivity would we have towards being someplace else, adapting to that culture and making all the right decisions? I just want to be sensitive to that when it comes to Giannis Antetokounmpo. That's number one. Number two, the story here to me, based on what Shams has said, based on what Wendy just pointed out, is Doc Rivers. Doc Rivers, ladies and gentlemen, has been coaching in the NBA for 27 years. Orlando and Boston, the Los Angeles Clippers, Philadelphia, now Milwaukee, okay? 27 years.